Welcome to Fireside Giants. My name is Alex with my co-host here, Anthony Rivardo. Today we have an interesting segment on the line for you guys. We want to take a look at Dave Gettleman's draft history since he's become the general manager of the New York Giants. Now, I think this is interesting because we'll get an idea of what did he hit on, what players did he hit on, some guys maybe we forgot about. How successful has he been? Has he been good in the first round? Has he been bad in the first round? We want to get a kind of a sense of where he's hit and where he's not hit. And how it's impacted this team in the long run, the past 3.5 years, and why firing him is a good move. And obviously, I think the majority of us believe that this is a forward-thinking move, getting rid of him at the end of the year or even sooner and moving forward with a new general manager who kind of has a better history of drafting, or at least is modernized in his approach to the game and understands what NFL teams need in today's era. But before we dive into the past couple years of draft history, we're going to list every single player. We're either going to say boom, bust, or they kind of land in the middle. They're serviceable, they offer something, but they're nothing special, and they're more of just depth pieces. But of course, the draft situation, if you're between the rounds of 4 and 7, you're not expected to be starters. You're not expected to be significant factors, but we'll see how many of those guys actually made an impact. We'll see how many of those guys are not even on the team anymore. Before we do so, Anthony, how are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing great, and I'm excited for this weekend's game, Miami Dolphins. I will be in Miami to cheer on our New York Giants. I'm so thrilled for that. Cannot wait to experience another in-person, live-action football game. Super excited. But right now, let's talk about Dave Gettleman. Of course, the reports over the weekend, rumors. Rumor has it he's going to retire at the end of the year. Other rumors are saying that the Giants already know that they're moving on from him no matter what. So it really does look like he's on his way out as general manager. Praise God, right? Hallelujah. I think we're all super excited about that. We're all ready for the Dave Gettleman era to end. It has brought upon way too much losing to this organization. So hopefully we can bring in a new GM, head into a new direction, and get some winning done. So, of course, when we're talking about Dave Gettleman, we're talking about the draft. The number one thing that a general manager needs to do is build through the draft. If you fail to do so, that's when you start to lose games. That's why the Giants have been losing, because they have absolutely failed to build through the draft. Now, I think that their more recent draft classes have been a lot better, but overall, since Dave Gettleman has been here, they've really struggled to build through the draft, and that's ultimately going to be the reason that he loses his job as general manager of the New York Giants.
Yeah, ultimately it comes down to building a foundation to the draft. And to start off, we'll look back at 2018. There's a couple names, a couple triggering names that I'm sure people will get rallied about. But I'll say the first one, Cyclone Barkley. At this point in his career, the injuries, being drafted second overall, the fact that we missed on Quentin Nelson, who is arguably the best guard in football, we could have used him right now. Cyclone Barkley's been a bust, right? I think it's pretty much a reality now that he was a bust for the Giants. Now, could he go on to have a successful career elsewhere? Absolutely. But for the Giants over the past 3 seasons, injuries, inconsistencies, the Giants haven't used him properly. I'm not saying he's at fault for everything. I'm saying the Giants also failed to capitalize and build a good offensive line around him. Why would you draft a running back second overall if you're not going to build a good offensive line? It blows my mind, but that's just where we are. And I would say Saquon Barkley is a bust up to this point, Anthony. Would you agree?
Yeah, I'd say this one is a miss. I don't think that you should ever select a running back with a second overall pick. Wasn't a good idea then, wouldn't be a good idea now, especially considering the state of the Giants roster. They really didn't have the offensive line necessary to make a running back good. And of course, you look around the league, we've had this discussion before, I'm sure many of you agree. You can pretty much get good running back play out of any running back as long as they have a good offensive line in front of them. Love Saquon Barkley, amazing human being, really inspiring person and player, and super talented player when he's healthy, but injuries have piled up, and that's part of the reason why you don't take a running back at number 2 or number 10. Look at Christian McCaffrey. He's been out pretty much all year, now done for the year once again. Running backs get hurt a lot. They just get injured. Even Derrick Henry's injured. Even Dalvin Cook got injured. Running backs get injured a lot. They're the most injury-prone position. That's why you don't take them at that high of a pick in the first round of the draft.
Yeah, a good offensive line and a good scheme. That's all you need to have a good running back. Look at Elijah Mitchell. He's a rookie 6th-round pick, and he's becoming a very, very talented running back in this league, and he's more productive than Saquon has been in the past 3 years. So that's kind of an indication that a good scheme and a good offensive line can make any running back look good. especially if they have the capabilities. But let's move on to the second selection in 2018, which is Will Hernandez. I would also say he's a bust. Everyone expected him to be a solid starting level caliber guard. He has been nothing but inconsistent the past few years since his drafting. I'd say this year he's still inconsistent. The past couple games for him have been abysmal. I've been watching the film. He gets beat consistently off the line of scrimmage. They transitioned him over to right guard. He was never a great left guard. He got to an average level at some point, but he never broke the above average level threshold. So I would say that's a miss. 34th overall pick, that's a pick you need to hit on. You need to have good players from that spot. The lack of development, he's been put next to a variety of different players, so they, again, haven't done him much good. Offensive line coaches being switched in and out constantly, so, it's tough for him to really get some consistency. But I'll say I think that overall, everything into it, that was a bust of a pick too. I'm not blaming him. A lot of the blame goes on the coaching staff. A lot of the blame goes on player development. But as of right now, that selection of Will Hernandez looks like a bust to me.
Yeah, I agree. I think Will Hernandez is a miss. As badly as I wanted him to be a hit, as badly as I wanted to see Big Will succeed, he just hasn't so far. He's had a lot of struggles. His rookie season looked great. He looked like a promising young player. Ever since then, it's just been downhill. And like you said, Alex, that's probably more to blame on the coaching staff than it is on Will Hernandez. Really unfortunate. Really wanted to see him succeed. But to this point in his Giants career, he just hasn't found the success that we hoped for. Now, this could definitely be one of those players that leaves the Giants, like an Eric Flowers, like a Justin Pugh, goes to another team and has a very successful career elsewhere. I could definitely see that happening for Will Hernandez. He just might not be a scheme fit, might not do well in the environment that the Giants have, or with the coaching staff that the Giants is. The coaching staffs actually that the Giants have had since Will Hernandez has been here. But talented player at one point, but right now it just looks like a miss. Didn't pan out to be what we hoped for him to be.
Yep, absolutely. Now let's go on to the next player, Lorenzo Carter, another kind of inconsistent, injured player. Lorenzo Carter looked good at times. He had some flashy games against the Patriots a couple years ago. He looked decent against Philadelphia on Sunday, but ultimately, I think he's another miss too. The Giants needed more from him. They needed him to develop into a regular starter who could make an impact, and he just disappears for games at a time. And then he'll show up out of nowhere and have a good game. It's just too little. It's too late. He has 9.5 sacks to his name in his career. It's not enough over 3 seasons. I guess 18, 19, 20. That's actually more than 3 seasons. It's 3.5 at this point, but he missed all of last year due to an Achilles tear. It's just not enough, man. I think that Lorenzo Carter is a miss in my book as well.
I'd say Lorenzo Carter is a miss, but I don't think it's as egregious of a miss as most people.
He's
It is
average,
a third round edge rusher. He's an average player. It's kind of what you hope to get most of the time. Unfortunately, the Giants probably were hoping for more just because they don't have much. But yeah, I mean, it's a miss in the fact that he's been injured and hasn't been as productive as people hoped. I think really better coaching staff, you develop that player a little bit more, he probably turns into a slightly better player, but ultimately, I guess he just wasn't really there. I know that there was more talent on the board in the third round of the 2018 draft. That's why I'm going to call it a miss. In another draft, I'd probably say it's okay to get a decent average player like that in the third round. But knowing that there was more talent on the board that went after him, gonna have to say that it is a miss.
Yeah, I mean, going on to the next one here, BJ Hill, he has 11.5 sacks in his career, played 59 games with the Giants compared to 43 from Lorenzo Carter. BJ Hill, I think, was a serviceable player. I wouldn't say he's a miss. I wouldn't say he's a hit. I think he's in the between average. He's a good rotational piece, good fundamental piece, foundational piece rather. And I think that overall trading him for Billy Price was a last resort. Definitely not what you want to do when your offensive line is struggling that much, trading a rotational defensive tackle, a defensive edge rusher, I guess you could say, for a backup center. I mean, you're always going to be taking a risk there, but BJ Hill, I'd say, lands in the average category. I'm happy with that draft pick.
Yeah, I mean, you're getting an average interior defensive lineman in the third round. That's a hit. I'm calling BJ Hill a hit. Unfortunately for BJ Hill and for the Giants, they went out there, they got Leonard Williams. That's not unfortunate for the Giants, but the unfortunate part is that acquiring Leonard Williams forced them to have to move on from BJ Hill. He got buried on the depth chart, and then eventually they needed offensive line talent. They traded BJ Hill, got Billy Price. I don't think that was the best trade. I think that they definitely should have held on to BJ Hill for that move specifically. They could have traded him for something else. But for Billy Price, I mean, Billy Price is not going to pan out. He just has never been a good player in the NFL. He's been a huge miss from the Bengals coaching staff. So BJ Hill, I thought was a really good selection. But if you want to play a little bit more of devil's advocate, call it a miss. The the selection directly after BJ Hill. BJ Hill was 69th overall. BJ went 69. The 70th overall pick was the San Francisco 49ers, Fred Warner. So in that sense, and then a few picks later, 83rd overall pick, Orlando Brown to the Ravens, 86th overall pick, Mark Andrews to the Ravens. Look at the Ravens, man. Their front office is insane. Next GM, I would really love if it came from the Ravens front office. That would be phenomenal because they really do know how to draft.
Yeah, absolutely. And then when we're looking at the back end of these drafts, I'll just kind of rapid fire them off. The last two from 2018, Kyle Lauletta, that's a miss. I mean, what do you expect from a fourth round quarterback? But ultimately, it's a fourth round quarterback. I mean, I'd rather spend it on an offensive lineman, considering that's been a major problem. They didn't draft a single offensive lineman after Will Hernandez. I think that you should be drafting one or two every single year at this point, especially when your offensive lineman is the Giants, Swiss cheese. And then RJ Mcintosh, who dealt with some injuries. He never really made an impact. He was released, I think maybe last offseason. So that, unfortunately, those two guys I think are two misses. But fourth and fifth round picks, those are still valuable selections, man. You can't be missing on all of them all the time. And when we get to next offseason, you're going to see a freaking bloodbath in the latter rounds and 2019's draft. But I'll let you give your take on Lauletta and RJ Mcintosh. I imagine you kind of are on the same boat.
Yeah, they're both misses. I didn't really understand the selection of Mcintosh at the time. They went with BJ Hill earlier, and at the time we also had Dalvin Tomlinson and a pretty decent interior defensive line. So I thought that was kind of like that was a Dave Gettleman pick. That was a Dave Gettleman pick. He loves his interior defensive linemen. They're the easiest for him to scout. Mcintosh looked good at times, just a lot of injuries, never stuck around. Lauletta was a miss because when you do take a quarterback in the fourth round, I believe personally that you are supposed to make that quarterback your backup. You're supposed to try your best to make him your serviceable backup quarterback. The Giants didn't really make him the backup quarterback. He just ended up moving on a couple years later. And so I think that's kind of where the miss comes into play. No, I'm not expecting to get a starting quarterback in the fourth round. Not everyone can be a Dak Prescott. However, everyone can be a backup quarterback. If you are good enough to be a backup quarterback, that's good enough for me. So Kyle Lauletta wasn't good enough to be the Giants' backup quarterback, unfortunately. I believe he's bounced around to multiple practice squads. So for that reason, I'm going to call that a miss.
Yeah, I agree with you there. 2019, oh, goodness gracious. This is a bloodbath except for three. I mean, I guess that's really the point of this. Daniel Jones, 6th overall pick. He is in this weird spot where he kind of is like between a starter and backup at this point. Like nobody really knows what he is. A lot of people have differing opinions. I understand. Like some people will say he's a backup. Some people will say he's capable of being a starter. Ultimately, we will never know. We will never know what Daniel Jones is capable of doing because this offensive line is not going to be good enough in time for us to properly evaluate him. This offensive line is 2 years away from being actually, I'd say, good if we make the right draft selections. And when that comes around, it's going to be tough, man. I mean, at this point, we could have a long discussion about Daniel Jones. I don't want to spend too much time on it because we have a lot of players to get through. But Daniel Jones, I'm going to say at this point, is in between. He's not a miss. He's not a hit. But I'd say he's kind of an average. Like right now, I just can't really tell yet.
Yeah, for Daniel Jones, I think that right now he is a starter. He is a serviceable starter. But when you select a quarterback with the 6th overall pick, you're not looking for a serviceable starter. You are looking for a superstar, a franchise quarterback. That's not Daniel Jones right now. So I'm going to put him in that middle range. He's meh, Paulie Walnut's impression. He's meh, but he's really not that superstar quarterback that the Giants were looking for. So he can't be a hit to me with the 6th overall pick. But he's also, I don't want to disrespect him too much. He's not a backup. He's not a bust. I don't think, not yet, at least, give him another year and we can really make that determination. But right now, I think he's in the middle. Don't want to call him a hit or a miss.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair. And next guy on the list, Dexter Lawrence. I like Dexter Lawrence. I think he's a good player. He's had his fair share of regression this season, but he's ultimately he's what you want him to be, right? He's a big interior defensive tackle. He can rush the passer with his power. He can stop the run. I think he has experienced a bit of natural regression this year. I mean, his 2020 season was pretty good, but then we expected him to take that jump to Pro Bowl level this year, and he just hasn't done that. I think we hit on Dexter Lawrence personally, but others may disagree. What do you think?
I think that Dexter Lawrence was a hit. I'm not saying that it was the best selection because, interior defensive lineman with a 17th overall pick. It's debatable whether or not you should go that route. There were offensive linemen on the board. Not many of them have panned out. Montez Sweat was a popular name on the board at the time. I remember that. A lot of people wanted the Giants to go with Montez Sweat. Montez Sweat, I believe he's injured this year, but he has had a pretty good career. He's turned out to be a good player. He went over to the Washington football team, of course, but ultimately, I do think that Dexter Lawrence is a really good player. I think that he's one of the better young interior defensive linemen in the NFL. Granted, young interior defensive linemen, good ones, they're pretty much a dime a dozen. There's a lot of them. It's not the most valuable position. However, Dexter Lawrence, really good player. There was kind of a need for another interior defensive lineman on the roster at the time. So I'm going to call that one a hit.
Yeah, I think that's also kind of what I was on the feeling of. And Deandra Baker, that's a bust. We all know that's a bust. We can't that was just such a bust, man. The fact that he didn't make an impact here, the fact that we traded up in the first round to get him, that is just her. 3 first round picks, none of them at this point are considered Pro Bowl level talents. So that's a really big shame. I'm going to skip over that one for your take, Anthony, because I know DeAndre Baker, you probably think that he is also a bust. However, back
Yes,
to the
absolute
third
bust.
round graveyard, picks of Dave Gettleman just really irk me. Oshane Ximines, like, they've benched him at this point. He's a healthy scratch every week. He's not getting any playing time. That just freaking hurts my soul, man. Oshane Ximines, out of Old Dominion, I didn't really expect it. I don't think anyone expected that pick. He did some nice things at Old Dominion, but he was the first player to ever be drafted from that school, I believe. So when that's the case, you're probably looking at a risk to begin with. I don't know what they saw, but ultimately he has not panned out up to this point. What do you think? I mean, I say that's a bust, right? I say that's a miss big time.
Yeah, that one is a miss to me. And I'll kind of relate it to the Lorenzo Carter thing. Lorenzo Carter, we called him a miss, but I was kind of more like he's in the middle, right? He's not really a hit or a miss. With Oshane Ximines, both third round selections, both that play the same position. When Lorenzo Carter is healthy, he's still an average serviceable player. He can produce to some extent. There is some production coming from him. Oshane Ximines, third round edge rusher, just like Lorenzo Carter, is not even seeing the field. He's not even good enough to get on the field because when he is on the field, he just doesn't play well at all. So that's the difference between a guy like Lorenzo Carter and a guy like Oshane Ximines. Oshane Ximines is a miss. It's unfortunate to say. Again, another player I was really rooting for. Maybe a better coaching staff could have made him a better player. Who knows? But, first player to ever be selected from Old Dominion. Really cool story there. Really cool story to follow. I hope that he sticks around in the NFL, maybe finds his way onto another team after his tenure with the Giants and develops into something, serviceable backup, whatever. But right now, he is a miss, was not who we hoped him to be. When we selected him with the third overall pick, was hoping to at least get an average serviceable starter. We have not gotten that, is what it is, but that's kind of the name of the game.
Yep, that's the name of the game. But moving on, Julian Love, that's a hit for me. I love Julian Love. He had a great game this past week. I think Julian Love's a fantastic player. And I'll list like a couple in a row. That way you can kind of give your take on a couple. So Julian Love's a hit for me. Ryan Connolly, that's a miss. I mean, they cut him after one season. He when you're cutting 5th round picks like at that rate, it's not sustainable. Darius Slayton, I believe, is a hit because he is a 5th round pick. The guy has a ton of drops, which is a huge issue for him. But as a 5th round pick and he's become a starter, I think that's a pretty good selection there. And then Corey Valentine, miss. George Asafo Ajayi, miss. Chris Slayton, miss. They're all 6th and 2 7th round picks, all misses. So out of those guys, Julian Love, hit. Ryan Connolly, miss. Darius Slayton, hit. Valentine, miss. Asafo Ajayi, miss. Chris Slayton, miss. What do you think?
Julian Love, major hit. 4th round pick to get as much production out of him as we do. Phenomenal selection there. Credit to Dave Gettleman for that one. I think Julian Love has been an excellent player. I think he's a starting level player. We just have him as a rotational piece, a backup, because we have so much talent in the secondary. And that's a good thing to have a really talented player as a backup that can fill multiple positions like Julian Love. You guys know I'm obsessed with Julian Love. I think that he is one of the most underrated and most valuable players on this team. So Julian Love, major hit to me. Ryan Connolly was a hit until he tore his ACL. And that's really, really sucky. Like, that sucks because he looked like he was going to have a promising tenure with the Giants, promising career. He was playing so good, tore his ACL, and then that was kind of it. He never really recovered from that, and then they cut him, and he hasn't really stuck on to any other team as a starter. So that was a miss, but sometimes it's kind of nobody's fault. Sometimes things just happen, and it ends up being a miss for reasons outside anyone's control. So unfortunate situation there. Darius Slayton, major hit. I think you guys, a lot of Giants fans don't realize this was a 5th round pick. For us to get as much production out of a 5th round pick as we're getting, from Darius Slayton is kind of incredible. This was a major hit, okay? This is probably, one of Dave Gettleman's better draft class. I know these final 3 picks, Corey Valentine, Big George, and Chris Slayton, all misses. None of them panned out. They barely even played for the team at all. But for those first 5 rounds, at least he had some hits in there, and especially towards the middle rounds. Darius Slayton was a good hit in the middle rounds, 5th-round pick. I mean, we were talking about him not so long ago as potentially blossoming into a solid wide receiver 2 or maybe even wide receiver 1. No, most of the time you get a 5th-round rookie wide receiver or a 5th-round receiver at all, you never think that they're going to have that type of ceiling. And we did think that he had a ceiling like that. Darius Slayton was a great player, a great selection, and a hit.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest concern for me is that we had 10 draft picks in this class, and we had 1, 2, 3, 3 hits. 3 hits out of 10 draft picks. None of I mean, some of them landing in the category, but 2019, this is the players that are no longer on the roster. Chris Slayton, George Asafo, Corey Valentine, Ryan Connolly, Deandra Baker. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 5 out of 10 players from the 2019 draft no longer on the roster. That is a massive problem. And then you have, you have Oshane Ximines on the roster, but he's not playing. So, there's that too. So you can really say he's not making an impact. I mean, when you have 6 of your 10 draft picks in that draft class not making an impact or on the roster, that's a massive problem. That is a huge indication that their scouting department, their draft selections are not panning out. That's only 2 or 3 years ago, guys. They need to be getting more from these players ultimately. Moving on to the 2020 draft class, things get a lot better. Things got a lot better when Joe Judge got here in terms of the drafting and the players, the quality of the players that they actually picked up. Andrew Thomas, that's a hit for me, a big hit. I mean, the first year, his rookie season, he had an ankle injury. He's getting used to the league. This year, he's a totally different player. He's arguably one of the best tackles in football this year when he's healthy and playing at his best. So, Anthony, when you're looking at Andrew Thomas, I imagine you're in the same boat. That guy, he's a massive hit. That's one of Dave Gettleman's biggest parting gifts.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Andrew Thomas was a major hit. I think Andrew Thomas is a foundational piece for the New York Giants offense, offensive line, and team in general for the long haul. This was a foundational building block, but this is the building block selection that Dave Gettleman needed to make in 2018. He needed to shore up the offensive line as soon as possible and hit on a really talented offensive lineman back then. It took him too long, and ultimately that's going to be his downfall. He didn't get things done early on in his tenure. And this, I do believe, this is the Joe Judge era that we're talking about now, 2020. This probably was Joe Judge effect, going with the offensive lineman, going with this really solid tackle. He had an injury this year. He missed some games. Even still, he comes back from the injury, bounces back, looks like the great player that he was before the injury. So Andrew Thomas, really good, talented young player, and it's super exciting for the Giants to finally have a good left tackle. It's been so long since they've been able to say that. Love Andrew Thomas, love that selection, major hit.
Agree. And then the next guy, just as much of a hit, Xavier Mckinney. Guy looks like a Pro Bowl caliber player this year. He has 6 interceptions this season. I mean, he's an absolute, 5 interceptions this season and 1 last year. Xavier Mckinney is becoming a very, very good free safety. He has unbelievable game speed. He has really good reaction timing. He watches a lot of film. You can tell the way he reacts to things. And he's a good tackler, and he's good in coverage. I think that for the most part, Xavier Mckinney, back-to-back hits in the first and second round. The second Joe Judge got here, you can't tell me that he didn't have an impact here, right? You can't tell me that Joe Judge didn't get here and suddenly the draft picks are getting a lot better. You're getting a lot more value from these guys. Andrew Thomas and Xavier McKinney, your first and second round picks, you need those guys to pan out. And so far, they're looking to be Pro Bowl level talents for the future. And that's a huge bonus for the Giants. Anthony, what are you thinking about McKinney?
Xavier McKinney, superstar in the making. I always loved that pick. I thought it was a phenomenal draft selection before he even played a down for the Giants. When they drafted him, I was thrilled. I did that film breakdown over the summer leading up to that NFL season, and I said, this guy will be a star. That was literally the title of the video. Xavier McKinney will be a star for the New York Giants. Right now, he is a star for the New York Giants, a star. And I love that. I'm super excited by that, and I think this was a major hit, maybe even the biggest hit in Dave Gettleman's tenure as general manager. It's either that or Andrew Thomas. This is definitely his best draft class. You go first round and second round, you get 2 major hits like that. This was definitely his best draft class, and I'm super excited by the future lane ahead of Xavier McKinney.
Absolutely. I mean, you called this a long time ago. You made a video right after he was drafted, and you were like, this guy's going to be a stud, and you were right. He is a stud. Matt Pert in the 3rd round. So far, I'd say meh. He's in the middle. I can't tell yet. I think the Giants are just violating him in the way of starting Nate Solder. Apparently, I heard that from, I think it was the Big Blue Rush podcast or something like that. I don't know. So one of those podcasts out there said that Matt Pert is not starting because of mental mistakes in practice, and that they like him more as a swing tackle. That sounds like a load of shit to me. You know what I mean? I think that sounds ridiculous. I don't get the logic behind that. There's no way Nate Solder's in practice making play. It's about what you do on the football fields, right? Then and yes, okay, he's a decent swing tackle. He can go play left tackle, he can play right tackle. But at the end of the day, you're talking about Daniel Jones' health here. You're talking about Daniel Jones' success. You want Matt Pert to be getting live reps because ultimately those live reps will help him get better. And Nate Solder is washed. He's done. His career's over. Matt Pert is like the future, or at least you want him to be. So stalling that and holding him back by not giving him action, I think is a really big mistake. I mean, we've seen players have bad practices before. We've seen them do stuff. I mean, for goodness sakes, we just signed Isaiah Wilson to our practice squad. If they're willing to do that, then I think that Matt Pert should all 100% be starting a right tackle. It makes no freaking sense to me. I think he lands in the average category, and then I'll let you get your take on that after I give Darnay Holmes. I think Darnay Holmes is a hit. I don't think they use him enough. I think they should have been using him. His lack of reps really hurt his progression. But whenever he's on the field, I see that guy making plays. He had an interception against the Eagles. He ran the route for Quez. What was his name? Quez Watkins, the rookie for Philadelphia. I think Darnay Holmes, he's probably lands in the average category, but I think if they gave him more time, he'd be a hit. So, what do you think about Matt Pert and Darnay Holmes?
Yeah, with Matt Parrott, it's kind of tough. You guys know I'm a huge Matt Parrott fan. I think that he could be a good player if the Giants would let him. They don't play him. They don't give him the opportunities to succeed. Don't think that he's in the best situation. You probably got to call it a miss because he hasn't seen the field for the Giants. But I do truly believe if he were to see the field an extended amount of time, I know he has seen it and he hasn't played that well at times, but he has had times where he has played well. And there is something there. You just got to develop it. It's really on the coaching staff at this point. I believe that if Matt Parrott played more, he would be a hit by now. Unfortunately, we haven't seen that come to fruition because the Giants just haven't let it. So I guess it's a miss, unfortunately, but I really wanted this one to be a hit, and I still believe that it could be if they were to treat it properly. And Darnay Holmes, I'm going to go with a hit there as well. I really like Darnay Holmes. I think that he's a very solid young slot cornerback. He's at least average, maybe even slightly above. I know probably the statistics people are going to show up, not the best, not the best. I get it. But at its core, this is a young secondary member. Young secondary members usually don't just stick in the NFL immediately, right? It usually takes time for them to develop. And he has developed nicely. He's had some plays that you're like, oh man, there is something there. He's had some plays where you're like, oh man, that was horrible. What are you doing? But ultimately, that's just the case with young second-year players, right? He's developing. He's a good player. He had that great interception versus the Eagles. I really like Darnay Holmes. I think that he was a hit considering he was a fourth-round pick, and he is at least an average viable starter for the Giants. So good selection there. Really like Darnay Holmes and hope that he has a long future with the Giants.
Yeah, I mean, he also had the interception against Patrick Mahomes, which Oceanic Ximines got wiped away on the offsides call. That would have won them the game. So, he had a big play. He's had a couple of big moments, big plays this year, and I think Darnay Holmes deserves more playing time. Ultimately, it really comes down to the scheme. I think he hasn't been getting playing time because of the scheme, and I guess he's small. He's a smaller guy. You really want to use him as a nickel corner. And it really just comes down to how the cards are folding for Patrick Graham in the matchups. But Shane Lemieux, I can't really evaluate that yet. So far, based on his rookie season, I'd say he's a miss. I mean, he had a terrible rookie season. He was the last ranked guard in football and pass blocking. So, I mean, the injury this year definitely derails his career up to this point. There's still plenty of time for him to become a good player, but at this point, I'd say that's a miss based on how he looked last year. Cam Brown, good special teams player, doesn't make an impact on defense. I'll give him a hit for special teams, but pretty much nothing for defense, which equals out to average, in my opinion. You need good special teams players. Out of a 6th-round pick to get a good special teams player, I think that's valuable. So I think he's about average because he doesn't offer much on defense. Carter Coughlin, I mean, he's injured too. I'd say he's a miss at this point. TJ Brunson, miss. Chris Williamson, not even on the roster anymore. Tay Crowder is average. Anthony, what are you thinking from Shane Lemieux to Cam Brown, Carter Coughlin, TJ Brunson, Chris Williamson, and Tay Crowder?
Shane Lemieux was a miss. I never liked him as a player. Like, I liked the selection at the time. I thought maybe there's something there. Saw him on the field, said, "Oh man, he should not be on the field. This is a miss. This is not a good player." Maybe he just needed more time to develop before seeing the field. Maybe he could have been a good player. Again, there was a lot of mismanagement with a lot of these players by the coaching staffs that they played under. So with Cam Brown or with Shane Lemieux, I think that he could have had a better future than he did. But unfortunately, now derailed career with injuries. It's a miss there. And especially, you look at some of the other names selected later on in the fifth round, they're starting to stick to their team. There's some better players that went after him. Cam Brown, I'm gonna say about average. I thought that he had some decent reps last year as a rotational pass rusher, and also I think that he is a good special teams player. So I'm not gonna say it's a major hit or anything, but it's probably close to a hit. He's been a viable player, especially on special teams. So average, it's meh. Carter Coughlin, I'm going to go with a hit. I actually think, for a seventh round pick to get as much production as we got out of him in his rookie season was really impressive. He played really well at times, and he is still on the roster as a seventh round pick, which is a lot for Dave Gettleman. But Carter Coughlin playing well at times, was a good edge rusher, moved over to linebacker, so he hasn't played much this year. I just think maybe he needs more time to adjust to that position. I don't know. He looked really good in the preseason. Giants just haven't played him yet. I don't really know if he's injured. If he is, then that's my mistake. But hopefully Carter Coughlin's able to bounce back next year, get some more playing time, and be a rotational backup. But I think that he was a hit. I think that he's been good enough, solid depth, quality player on the back end of the roster. TJ Brunson not on the roster. That's a miss. Chris Williamson didn't make the roster. That's a miss. Tate Crowder, major hit, final pick in the draft. For him to even be a viable starter, maybe you're going to argue he's not viable, but however, he is out there. He's playing in the games, and the Giants aren't getting totally torched because of him. He had that interception versus Philly, and on that play, his coverage was phenomenal on that play. It wasn't. I
From
know it was
Boston
just a
Scott, it
terrible
was.
throw. Yeah, it was just a terrible throw by Jalen Hurts if you look at it on face value, and he just kind of threw it up because he had nowhere to go with it. But if you watch the full play, the coverage by Tate Crowder on that play was amazing. He took that route away, and then Jalen Hurts just threw it up, and Tate Crowder was there in the right place at the right time. But he put himself in the right place at the right time because his coverage was really, really good on that play. Tate Crowder, developing young player, has had a lot of struggles and will continue to have struggles. Don't think he'll ever be a bona fide superstar starter in this league, but for the final pick in the 2020 NFL Draft, good player. I'm calling that a hit.
Yeah, that's fair. I think I would say he is a high-end backup for the Giants, and that's what they would want him preferably to be. They would get a nice coverage linebacker alongside Blake Martinez, ideally, and then have Tate Crowder as that backup, kind of supplement fatigue, whatever it might be. I think that would be his ideal role. That's what you talk about, a good depth piece. Tate Crowder, though, like you said, really nice play. I posted the clip on Twitter this morning. Philadelphia actually runs hurry up to the offensive line. They try to catch the Giants off guard. Boston Scott sneaks out on the flat route, and Tate Crowder picks it up so seamlessly. It's really well done because that was the first read for Jalen Hurts to Boston Scott, and he does a really nice job. Tate Crowder really identifies that, shows his IQ off, and makes a really great red zone interception to blank the Philadelphia Eagles in the first half for the first time this season. So that was really, really nice by Tate Crowder. But let's move over to 2020. Now, a lot of these picks, or 2021 rather, a lot of these picks are too early to tell, right? It's still their rookie season. So take this with a grain of salt, just based on what we've seen in our projections. Kadarius Toney, I think, is going to be a big hit, right? Based on his skill set, what we've seen him do. If an offensive coordinator can come in here and maximize Kadarius Toney, and he can stay healthy, he's going to be a superstar in the NFL. He's going to be a bona fide superstar receiver in the league if he can stay healthy and he's utilized properly. Problem is, he's been healthy all year. Now he has a quad injury after an ankle injury and lacerated thumb. So he just keeps getting injured. I don't know what's going on with him. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the cold weather. He's not used to it. He spent his whole career down in Florida and in the college. It's a little bit warmer. So maybe the cold got to him. Maybe it's the training staff. Maybe it's the turf. Who knows? Ultimately, for him, it's going to boil down to health. As long as he stays healthy, he'll be great. If he's not healthy, he's going to be a bust. But I think that he has the skill set to be a freaking insane player. Azeez Ojulari, I also believe, is a hit for the 50th overall pick to get him there. He's going to be a starting outside linebacker for us. The kid is 21 years old. He's super young. He's 2 years younger than Kadarius Toney. Both are rookies. I think for him, he's still developing. His body is still developing. His mental aspects are still developing. I think he's going to be a big hit for this. So this draft class, Anthony, first round and second round so far, looking to be big hits.
Yeah, I think that Kadarius Toney will be a hit. I'm not going to go ahead and call him a hit already. It's too soon to call any of these players hits, misses, or anything, in my opinion.
Exactly.
2021 draft class, it's too recent. But I think he'll be a hit. I'm projecting that Kadarius Toney will be a hit. However, if he is a miss, I think it's going to have a lot to do with the other players that were drafted in the first round. Rashawn Slater was selected just after the Giants had, they had the 11th overall pick. They traded it away. Just a couple picks later, Rashawn Slater goes. Looks like an all-pro as a rookie. Imagine if the Giants had him and Andrew Thomas. That's something to think about. And there were some
Daniel
other
Jones might be
really
good.
good players that went on the back end. Yeah, actually, though, if Daniel Jones had those two as his bookends, he might actually have a really good season. But yeah, I think Kadarius Toney is going to be a hit. I'm excited by the prospects of Kadarius Toney. I think he's going to be a really good and exciting player. And you guys already know that I love Azeez Ojulari. Loved him before the Giants even took him. Made a video, said if they take him with the 11th overall pick, I wouldn't even be upset by that. I think he's that talented. I'm not saying I want him to go at 11. I think that was too early for him. But if they took him there, I think he is going to be a really good, talented, starting level edge rusher, and maybe one day can be a really good one at that. So really great pick there with the 50th overall selection. Major hit there, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. Moving on to the next pick, Aaron Robinson stole him away from the Philadelphia Eagles. I think Aaron Robinson, it's too early to tell, but I think he has the potential to be a hit. He looked good against Philly. He's fast. He's physical. I mean, the guy, he stood up to Boston Scott when he tried to truck him over. He stood up and made a nice play. He didn't get absolutely ran over for a cornerback. That's pretty impressive. I think that he's really young. He's inexperienced. As he gains more experience, he gave up a couple big plays. I know Jalen Reagor dropped one. He caught another one, but at the end of the day, Aaron Robinson was right there. He was right in his grill. He just lacked the positioning, lacked the understanding of where to be at the right time. He'll get there. He'll see that on film and he'll adjust and he'll get better. I think so far, I think Aaron Robinson is impressing me with his play and his physical traits and his intelligence and development. He looks a lot better than he did against Kansas City when he made his first appearance. But obviously just ridiculously too early to actually evaluate him. Aaron Robinson, I'm going to go with. He has the potential to be a hit based on what he's shown me. Allison Smith, I can't even give you an answer on that. He hasn't played enough for me to even see what he's capable of doing. Gary Brightwell, I hated that selection. I don't know why the Giants drafted him. Trey Smith all the way. The fact that we didn't draft a single offensive lineman in this draft class is absolutely appalling. Really pisses me off. And then Rodarius Williams, I think, would have been a hit for a 6th-round pick. He was actually getting a ton of time before he tore his ACL. Really unfortunate, really sad to see him go down. We spoke to him after the draft. Really, really good guy. I think he would have been a really good talent for this team. And he still can be when he comes back from injury. So I think overall, these guys, I'll let you give your take on the last few. But Kadarius Toney, Azeez Ojulari, Aaron Robinson, and Rodarius Williams, I think will all end up being hits if Rodarius Williams can return from that injury. Allison Smith, Gary Brightwell, I don't know yet. Gary Brightwell, I just don't think has any purpose on this team whatsoever. He doesn't actually do anything. Unless we have an offensive lineman that is top 10 in run blocking, I don't think he'll ever be a competent running back on this team. I think he'll be more or less a wasted 6th-round pick. That's how I feel about him, unfortunately. No beef, Gary. I still like you as a guy.
Aaron Robinson, I don't know. I haven't seen him play enough. He looks like he could be a hit. I hope he is, but I think he will be. Honestly, I project my prediction. He will be a hit, but it's too soon to tell. Allison Smith, I haven't even seen play. I can't even give an eval on that. Gary Brightwell, I will say, I never liked this selection. I don't think he will be a hit. Technically, can't really give an eval on it, but never was a fan of this. Didn't think that he was that impressive as a collegiate prospect, and definitely thought they should have went offensive lineman, taking a chance on one of those in the later rounds rather than another running back. They didn't need a running back. Rodarius Williams looked like he was going to be a hit, injured, so we don't know right now. Hopefully he can come back, bounce back, have a really good career with the Giants, and be a hit. But right now, I don't know. Who knows? Hopefully one day we'll see.
Absolutely, guys. Well, I hope you enjoyed this segment, taking a look at every single draft pick since Dave Gettleman has been the general manager. A lot more misses than hits, a lot more misses. The drafts got significantly better when Joe Judge came and brought some of his guys with him and started scouting and helping be a part of that entire process. I think the last 2 draft classes, a lot more hits than misses, especially, some of them being pretty solid special teams guys too. So I think that's a big one. But between the years 2018 and 2019, it is a freaking bloodbath of misses. I mean, holy hell. Deandra Baker, Ocean Ximenez, Ryan Connolly, Corey Valentine, George Asafo, Chris Slayton, Will Hernandez, Carter, Kyle Aletta, RJ Mcintosh is absolute freaking abysmal draft selections over and over and over again. Last 2 years have been far better. But the fact that Dave Gettleman, what he did in those first 2 draft classes is just appalling. I think that he deserves to be fired for that in itself. And of course, the offensive line being a disaster does not help. But guys, make sure to subscribe below on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Enjoy the rest of your day. And we'll catch you guys on the next Fireside Giants episode.